It is now 6:30 p.m., Thursday, February 7th, and I'm convening the meeting of the Town of Newfane Select Board. First order of business is review of minutes. We have several sets of minutes. The first one is the January 15th meeting, special meeting.
I move to accept the January 15th minutes.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections or additions? Okay, all those in favor? Priscilla, is this the meeting?
I was here.
You were here, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Second is the meeting of January the 17th. Do I have a motion to accept these minutes?
Seconded.
Okay, been moved and seconded. Additions or corrections?
So just content. On page 2, the reflectors. In fact, there was a report of that, but the content really was that the law that we sent was not applicable, and everything, if anything the town wants to do, it becomes a civil matter. So that just...
I don't know. Well, I think we could say that you said that.
Right.
I don't think we didn't vote or...
Oh, I know, but that's what Sheriff Bagley reported to me, so... Just to me, that clears up and says...
What wording do you want to add?
That if we choose as a town to do anything else, it becomes a civil matter.
But would you accept that Gloria stated that?
Well, it starts with Gloria reported that.
I understand. I don't know anything about the legality of it other than what you said. So I'm just simply saying if it's added, it should be in your mouth as where it came from.
So the second...
I'm not finding it, by the way.
It's on the page down, just above payrolls.
Okay.
And also reported that.
Okay,
yeah.
Fine.
I mean, to me...
Fine, and stated.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just as long as it's part of that sentence, I'm fine with it. Did you get that, Pat?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Are there any other additions or corrections? Okay, hearing none. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favor of the approving the minutes as amended?
Aye.
Aye.
I abstain over here.
Okay. Passes unanimously with the exception of Todd, who was not present. The next one is the minutes of the 24th. Do I have a motion to pass those minutes? Special meeting.
So moved. Second.
Discussion, additions, or corrections? Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes as written?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. And the final one is from January 31st. Priscilla was not here for that meeting. And so...
I move to accept the minutes of January 31.
Seconded.
Okay, are there any corrections or additions? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously with the exception of Priscilla, who was not present at that meeting. Okay, great. Very good. Moving forward, next is the Foreman Road Commissioner's Report, which I believe we all had copies of in our boxes.
Yes.
And Todd, would you like to kind of highlight any particular things in that report?
Basically, that we are having problems in the disc lines because of the lack of snow. It probably won't be there tomorrow.
That's not going to be a problem.
But a lot of our culverts are almost frozen. So if we get a lot of rain, I'm kind of worried that the culverts aren't going to take it, but there's really not a whole lot we can do about it. If we have to thaw out the culverts, I'm gonna have to buy a sap tank to put in the back of the truck, so we have water to be able to use our steam cleaner to do that. One thing.
What is that? What's a sap tank?
It's just a plastic tank that the guys used to haul sap around the back of their trucks with.
Okay.
It's like $700 though.
But what, we've not had one in the past, or do
We
we?
used to borrow them, but I can't. The guy that had it before, his stuff broken, so I can see if I can find another one, but
That you may have to
I'm
purchase.
purchase to buy one. The only other thing I did put in there is last snowstorm we had problems with people parking in the road. And I'm going to, if that happens again this storm with the amount of snow we're supposed to get, I'm going to be getting hold of the sheriff's department and vote. And one of the ones we had trouble with was you had to back out of Upper Ear, right? Just couldn't get by your car over here, so we just got to make sure we can let them get by there so it gets stuck.
Yep, there's a
We
big
had
mountain.
We've been having trouble with certain.
How does that work, Todd? Do we have any of these things, do we post in any way?
I forgot to have that put in the reformer. We should have put it in the reformer. There's been a notice, we used to always put a notice in the reformer for that, and I should have had her do it before I forgot about it. What I normally do is call the sheriff's department, and they usually try to get a hold of the owner before they go. Put them on the road. It's not been a big problem.
Okay.
We have a couple of contractors who've been pushing snow out on the roads and leaving them know. And if I see that, I'm going to get a hold of the sheriff's department about that too, because that is illegal. We either get the roads plowed, they'll get a phone call from people that, you know.
You mean the guy who's doing something, plowing for individuals?
Plowing the snow out from people's driveways out in our roads, leaving it, so.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, I don't know, you guys have any questions? I mean, the rest of it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was just wondering about when you met with Todd Manise, do we get a report on that discussion about Hickey Bridge and Lynch?
Didn't get anything back yet. I hadn't turned it over to Dan, because Dan's been working on those. He's supposed to be getting a hold of Dan on that. He said that he's got 40 towns that are in the same boat we are. One of the biggest problems is like Lynch Bridge, where the river's another 25 feet wider.
Right.
That FEMA won't pay to have that bridge built up length, that we end up having to haul huge riprap in there and filling the riverbanks back out again.
And they will pay for the riprap, right?
Yeah, he said a lot of times
Oh, I
it's
know.
more expensive to do that than it would be to just add to the bridge. So he was going to check into those, because we talked to him before about Hickey Bridge, and he said that he won't approve the Hickey Road Bridge the way FEMA wants that done, because he said it's not going to work. So, but he's supposed to get hold of Dan, get back to Dan on all that stuff.
So, where are you talking about now, Gloria? Which bridge?
Well, it was both the design that was proposed by FEMA for Hickey Bridge, so that's why Todd
Right.
met
And
with
what
Todd.
was the other-
And the other one was the Lynch Bridge.
Oh, on Lynch Bridge. Okay.
Right.
Well, Lynch Bridge, yeah, we will discuss them separately. But,
So essentially, you're saying that what Todd Manise is saying, he won't allow what FEMA wants done.
He doesn't want to approve. He's going to get a hold of Barry Cahoon again and see what Barry has to say about it. Because the last time we talked to Barry, Barry said, you know, that riverbank's going to be built up above the abutments.
Yeah.
You can pour cement under the abutment, but if there's nothing to protect it, it's just going to wash out again. So he wanted to try to get a hold of somebody from FEMA. He wanted to work with Dan on that, because Dan's been working with FEMA on that, trying to get that straightened out.
You know, Dan, they made any contact or anything?
Last I heard, when I talked to Dan the other day, that Todd hadn't gotten back to him yet.
Yeah.
Right,
I think he's got, as you say,
He's got 40 pounds he's dealing with, so.
right.
yeah, but
we do have to stay on it. Okay. So if you would just kind of nudge, or actually, since you have contact with them, and ultimately I think of it as something in that big package we call
Yeah,
FEMA,
the FEMA pack.
for lack of calling them
but
less.
Dan's not doing any particular work on Lynch Bridge,
Not yet, no.
so
No.
No, I'm saying to Chris, to
I understand.
kind of include it in the
Try to keep the ball in the air.
Exactly, and tracking it and kind of figuring out whether we can get any leeway on
I
this.
told Todd they have to be careful about Hickey Road Bridge, so they've already told us they're only going to give us a certain amount.
Right.
We don't want to screw that up, so.
yeah, but
Right.
He was going to talk to Barry and see what they can do.
Okay. Okay. Is there anything further on the road foreman's report?
do we need to make a motion to allow Todd to buy that if it needs to be purchased?
I don't know.
I mean, he said it was $700 or $800, so.
Like 700, somewhere around $700.
Yeah, I think given, I mean, just in general, we've taken that if something is sort of, is there a budget line item is the first question. There's probably, does it fall under a standard line item or not?
Not really.
I think if not,
I'll find it in the budget somewhere.
right, but it's probably still better if you're going to need to allot it to a line,
Right.
because that's the only way Maureen can pay it. But I think it would be better to have it as a straight motion to authorize the purchase of it. It does it if it proves necessary. So could I hear a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion on that?
And do you think you know of anybody else who might have one?
There's a bunch of guys around, so I might be able to find one. We may, now that if we get the snow they're talking about, we may not need it anyways.
Yeah.
Because once the snow insulates it again, the culverts may start thawing their own, so I hope.
Okay, so, all right, so there's a motion that authorizes you to purchase it. It's still ultimately within your overall budget.
I think we need it on a small footprint.
And, yeah, I mean, that's where it qualifies. So the motion has been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I'll abstain.
Well, you shouldn't, actually.
Whatever.
You don't make money on it. You're recommending it.
Right.
But there's no reason that you should. I mean, you may abstain. But I don't see what. All right. So passes unanimously, is it? Yeah. Okay. If you're selling it to us, that's different. Okay. And then actually, that was out of sequence because we still have the actual. We have a motion on the table to accept the report. So let's deal with that. We're doing it out of sequence and not worrying about it too much. All those in favor of accepting the road foreman, road commissioner's report, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We move ahead.
Did someone make, okay.
That was me. I don't know.
We didn't have a motion on that, on accepting the foreman's report, I don't believe.
I think we started
had a
with
motion. Chris Drew made a motion to purchase a sap tank.
Go
Priscilla
back a
seconded
little.
it.
Go back a little. No?
No.
All right, well, could
Did
someone
we?
move it? I
I'm,
think it was, but
yeah, I
it's
do
all
too.
right. Gloria moved, and who wants to be second?
And Chris.
Second, and it passed unanimously.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right,
Thank you.
moving forward, thank you. Okay, the next we're moving to is scheduled members of the public, and the question of traffic violation distribution between the town of Newfane and the village of Newfane. And what we're after here is trying to make sure we do receive the correct amount, just the appropriate amount that we are due. And we have both the representative of the county sheriff, that is Mark Anderson, and I know we have Marilyn Distler, who's been handling it for the village, right? So I don't know which of you guys could want to start. Maybe we could start with Mark. You're telling us a little bit about how it works, and then we could get some input on it.
I think that will provide some foundation for Maryland as well. Everybody hear me okay? Before I go into the tickets, I just want to cover last month, December, as well as this month. As far as calls go, we've actually, it's kind of par for the course with what we've seen in other towns. I can't really compare it to last year for Newfane, obviously because we didn't contract with Newfane last year. But, I mean, for the most part, calls are pretty much down. We had 28 calls for service. Really nothing seems to be a high point. It's fairly normal activity, including VIN verifications, a couple motor vehicle crashes, and I mean, a few citizen assists, but overall 28 calls for service. During the month of December, we did have a sobriety checkpoint in the village, right here on Route 30 in front of our office. That was as part of the DUI enforcement that we conduct with the Governor's Highway Safety Program. So over the years we've had complaints about the checkpoints not being in the towns, and now that we have a checkpoint supervisor, we've been trying to move the checkpoints out to our communities. So we did host one there. We plan to host another checkpoint coming this spring. That'll be towards occupant protection, and I'm not sure where that will be, but
is that seatbelt use when you say occupant protection?
it's seatbelt use. It goes as far as child safety seats, seat belts, motorcycle helmets. So we lump it under, but for the most part, it's seat belts.
Don't drive your car, okay? That little one.
So as far as December, we did have a couple motor vehicle crashes just regarding some of the roads freezing and just with the snow conditions. People are driving a little too fast for conditions, but ultimately nothing serious to note. We had a total of 42 3/4 hours of service that we provided to the town, of which 19 was billable hours. The other 23.75 hours were provided through grant services. For January, again, pretty much the same concept. As far as calls for service goes, nothing really too significant that stands out. The only thing I kind of wanted to bring up, and part of it is because we haven't issued a press release because we're waiting on some information regarding it, but there was a theft right here in the village. It was a theft from a motor vehicle. A cell phone was taken. So it hasn't been out in the press yet because we're still waiting on certain pieces of information regarding it. But we would like to pass along, lock your cars, because people are starting to sneak through them, and that's actually been pretty common throughout the county. We've been seeing it in a lot of towns. We provided 28 hours of service this month, with 24 and a half of those being billed. Part of the reason why we only had 3.5 hours of non-billed time is we've exhausted our Governor's Highway Safety Program grant. That we get certain allotments each year, so if we expend the money, then we request more money. So we're currently in a process where we're waiting for more grant money from the Governor's Highway Safety Program, and I hope to know by the end of the week or by the end of next week what the status of that is. So that's basically what has been going on in the town as far as calls go. Now, as far as the tickets go,
before you go to the tickets, there was a report, and I just noticed in the police report that there was a break-in, a theft on Sunset Lake Road. Are you aware of that?
that is a state police investigation.
I understand. I just, it does suggest somebody's doing something they shouldn't be doing, so we've got to be on the lookout.
Yes,
and the back roads, this is commonly where the problems happen.
Thefts have been on the rise for the last couple months. We actually just this last snowstorm we had a burglary in progress during the storm, and what that was actually somebody. I think I might be speaking ahead of myself. I think he was looking for beer, but people are starting to get to a point where they can't afford things, and so they're taking it.
Wow.
So certainly we are encouraging people to lock their vehicles, lock their houses. But any questions regarding the current service? All right. As far as tickets go, I've run 2 reports, which I've also provided this information to Maureen. John, you were CC'd in it. I just provided, I believe it was on Thursday. Those reports are basically the same thing that Maryland gets on behalf of the village. The format is slightly different, and the reason for that is because the software that we were using to pull the data out of our system, for whatever reason, the state of Vermont doesn't really understand why, but it's not working. So we found another way, and we're providing it that way. It does provide the same information, though. So in the month of December, we issued a total of 29 tickets, of which 27 of those are written under municipal ordinances, meaning that the town can get some of that money back. The formula, just to recap on that, it's the total fine amount minus $41 per ticket, and 80% of that. So the $41 is an administrative fee that comes off of every ticket regardless. And then the 80% is, or the 20% that isn't received by the town is money that goes to the state for like the Judicial Bureau and other pieces of the puzzle that they provide. So if my math is correct, which I think it is.
I'm just trying to do this myself. You go ahead.
For tickets that were issued on municipal ordinances, that should be $4,675.
Over what period?
For the month of December.
Fourth? I'm just looking at this page. What am I missing? I'm looking at a page where the total is at this page.
That is different.
Oh, okay.
And that's where I think Marilyn's going to be able to explain the best.
Okay.
So this is what was issued during December 1st through midnight of January 1st. And so
you sent that to me? I just don't see it, but that's all right.
it was a slightly different format because I didn't realize that the town hadn't been receiving them. So I sent from July 1 all the way to present.
Okay.
So it's a slightly bigger number.
Well, it should be much bigger.
It is.
So the total, just say it again.
The grand total for the month of December is $4,675. 27 of those are, or 27 of those tickets, minus 41 for each ticket.
Right.
80% of that, it comes out to $2,854.40, which if I had to estimate in the month of December, we probably billed you for about $1,000. That'd be a guess, but
it's a little less than if it's 10,000 for the year, it's a little less than 1,000 a month. So that's a very good ratio there. That would be very good to keep that up. Just keep taking people except for me.
Well, I mean, we do like to tell people this. I mean, quite frankly, the way we look at it, we don't have an issue writing the tickets because the town's paying for the service. If the town gets money back, I think it makes sense personally. While we can pretty much show consistently that the revenue stays pretty much the same, we don't like to tell people to rely on it because tomorrow everybody could start going the speed limit.
And in all honesty, they're also, well, yeah, right, that's but the other part of it is priorities. Because we've given, as you've said, that break-ins, small thefts, etc., are on the uprise. Bottom line, the reason that we use, whether it's yourselves or the state police, is to protect.
Yes.
And keeping people, slowing them down is part of that protection.
Absolutely.
But another important part of that protection is making sure our back roads are well. So there's always got to be a balance. And we're not in business. We're really trying to.
And that's, I think you basically articulated what I'm trying to say is that we are trying to provide the full service, but certainly within the town of Newfane, traffic issues are, I would say, significant, and I think these numbers can support that.
Okay.
For the month of January, we issued a total of 20 tickets that are claimable under the municipal ordinances, which comes to a grand total of $3,337, with a total back to the town of $2,013.60.
Now, this is where the oddity comes up, which is the thing, and you'll have to explain to me why this report is different, because I'm seeing from the treasurer a check from Vermont for $543, and that's much less than we're talking about.
I can give you a brief explanation.
That's why
Maryland.
I'm prepared to give an explanation of that.
Great.
You want to do it? That's what I prepared for tonight.
I'm basically going to say is what my report says doesn't correlate with what that says.
So maybe
the time frames just don't match.
Okay, maybe Marilyn can explain it to us.
Are you?
I think that's about all I have, unless you guys have any questions.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Marilyn, maybe you can make sense of this, how $2,000 becomes $500.
I came tonight prepared to just speak at a very high level about the process that I use for the village to track the tickets that are written for the village and our ultimate gathering of the funds for those. I talked to the Sheriff's Department about ultimately if they want a more detailed explanation that other towns are interested in finding out the mechanics of how I do this. I'd be glad to go over it with the people who would ultimately be doing it. But I...
We can stop. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, okay, now, here we go. Chief Brooklyn. Okay.
One point to keep in mind, the village contracts with the Sheriff's Department only for traffic enforcement. We have ordinances that are only for speeding and paying attention to signs, so that's the only thing. They don't do anything for else for us but traffic enforcement. So this is just a high-level overview. I created a spreadsheet with columns that track these different things.
These are pseudo numbers, right? I mean,
No.
Are these real?
These are pseudo numbers, yes. So I created a spreadsheet. Every month we get an invoice and a STARS report from the Sheriff's Department. Maureen's been getting those all along. The key is the next step where it says I have to ask for and get a detailed ticket report from the Sheriff's Department, which I believe is what you just said you did send to them.
Yes.
But I call Holly or email Holly, she gets that to me. At that point, I can start tracking because the STARS report is numbers but not ticket numbers, and without the ticket numbers you can't track. So for every ticket issued, I enter the ticket number, the date, the time, and the amount onto my spreadsheet, and I just put 3 examples on there just to show.
I see.
Those are not real tickets.
From the Sheriff's Department?
From the Sheriff's Department detailed ticket report, I'm able to get that information. Around the 10th of the month, you can get online with the Judicial Bureau and pull down their report of what they've collected in the previous month. And I pulled the town and the village because I checked the town's report to make sure none of the tickets on there got paid to the village.
Is this the report?
Yes. And I also checked to make sure none of the village tickets got paid to the town,
Gotcha.
vice versa. So now I can go in, and if I find a ticket that I had been tracking, oh yes, it's on my report, they paid $77 out of $145, and that's a real number. And I mark it as pending until I actually get the check. And if any tickets show up on the town's report that Holly has previously told me were village tickets, I put those down as town, and I send an email to the Judicial Bureau copying you guys and say, I was told this is village, you've got it on the town's report, can y'all figure out what's going on? She may come back and say, oops, our mistake up there. There's 3 levels of manual entry on these tickets, so there's room for error at various steps of the way. If the state made the mistake, they correct it, and they reallocate the funds to us and allocate them back out from the town. We don't know that's happened until we get those reports, and by then they've cut the checks. If they say, no, it says town, then I go back to the Sheriff's Department and say, you told me village, the state says it says town, and we track them back there. Those are becoming fewer and further between, but they still happen. Then when I actually get the check, which is at the top of the next page, I mark that it was actually paid to the village and the date that I got the check, and I track them that way.
Okay.
Now, the most recent Judicial Bureau report that I got, which is the tickets that were collected by the state in January, included tickets that were written in June, August, September, October, November, and December of 2012, as well as some of the January 2013 tickets.
I see.
There is no correlation between the month that was written and the month you get your money. So when Mark says we wrote $4,000 worth of tickets and you're going to see $2,600, you're not going to see that next month.
But on the other hand, you know, as a running thing, it should
ultimately you should see
get
it
more some months. And
yes.
Now, this number here, the ticket number that shows up here,
yes,
is that the same number?
That's the ticket number.
That's what you use to correlate.
So when I get that right, which I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on here, but that's the ticket number, and that's the key to the whole puzzle. And without that detailed report, you can't track those. Every once in a while, and I still have some 2010 tickets that the village hasn't collected money for yet. So every once in a while, I'll run through my old tickets that haven't been collected, and I'll send an email to Gabrielle up at the Judicial Bureau, and I copy you guys, and I say any status on these. And they may come back as it was dismissed, or they held a court hearing and the officer didn't show up, so they let the person go, or it just hasn't been collected yet, or it was actually for DUI and we don't get those because we don't have an ordinance of those, or whatever. So I have to also kind of track back and see what's going on with those. So that's a very high level of that. If anyone's going to actually do it, I can go through a lot more detail about how I do it, but I just wanted you to kind of get the steps there. And then I have a second spreadsheet, which is in the middle on the second page, that I keep track of how many hours they invoice us for, what they invoiced us for, how many tickets the STARS report shows, and what the fines were, how many tickets the detail report shows, and what the fines were, and then when we actually collected them. So, like in July of '09, we've actually collected both of the tickets that were written that month for a total of 52% of what the fine money was. That's how much we got, and it goes on from that. And sometimes tickets are dismissed. There was one in November of '09 that was actually town, not village, so we only collected 9 of the 10 that were on our report, etc. So that's a high-level overview of that. Are there any questions on that?
Well, the question I have is, you are doing this, these spreadsheets, as just as a volunteer thing for the village, or do they hire you to
I'm
do
the
this?
treasurer for the village. It's a volunteer.
As the treasurer of the
It's a
village.
volunteer position. And when we first started contracting with the sheriff back in '09, it became apparent to me that after 3 or 4 or 5 months of them writing tickets and us collecting no money, that the only way I was going to figure out why we weren't getting any money was to dig
track
into it a little
yeah.
further. And that's when we found out back in '09 that almost all our tickets were going to the town, because there's 2 spots on the ticket that have to say which ordinance, Village of Newfane, and who are you patrolling for, Village of Newfane, and again, manual entry at several different points, including the Sheriff's Department and the state, could result in just the word Newfane, and the default is the town.
Understood.
So we've straightened out just about 100% of those things,
Okay.
but there still occasionally show up as things that have to be straightened out. But it behooves a municipality to track this stuff, not only so that you make sure you get what's due to you, but also so when you have your quarterly or annual meeting with Keith and his staff, you can have statistics that say, you know, this is what we're paying you and this is what we're getting, and let's talk about, you know, if you're patrolling 20 hours and only writing 5 tickets, maybe it's not the right time or the place or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. And again, we
good
are
data,
only
yeah.
paying for traffic enforcement,
No, I understand.
so we're not seeing hours spent, like you said, checking out.
No, I
Go into that.
think what I'm trying to get to is within the town of Newfane, understanding that you're doing as the treasurer, but the village of Newfane has no administrative assistant, is that correct? You don't have, do you have any?
We have no, I mean, we have 3 trustees who are all volunteers. We have a clerk who's a volunteer, and we have a treasurer who's a volunteer.
So
That's our
I'm just trying to
entire
understand a little
governing
bit.
thing.
Maureen has not done something like this, nor has Pat up to now. We haven't asked Pat to, though we've asked Maureen to give us a better understanding of it. I'm just not clear among, and this isn't really a question to you, it's really a question to the board. Who should be doing, somebody should be doing this, just what you're doing. I mean, it makes total sense, but just without going further, it makes total sense what you're doing, because then you can track what you got and what's still sitting there, and now you know what you gotta find out about.
She's tracking it. Could we hire her to, out of the fine money that we get back, do this for the town? She's already doing it. It wouldn't be that much more for you, would it? Or is it something you'd be interested in maybe?
Probably couldn't pay her enough.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's hard to answer that question. I get, you know, I don't know what to
So the
say.
tickets are either going to be issued to the town or issued to the village.
I mean,
You're already tracking it to the village.
whoever would do it on behalf of the town, it would involve, you know, setting up your own spreadsheet. It would involve getting the reports every month from the sheriff. Now, you said you wrote some months 20 or 25 tickets or something for the town, which our numbers tend to be more in the teens.
Right.
But, you know, entering all those numbers, and then when you get the Judicial Bureau report, checking
Right.
each one of those numbers, and then when you get the check, and then when sorting. I mean, it's some amount of work. I don't know. I mean,
Do you have a guesstimate of, would you add, you know, say 5 hours a month that you,
I don't think it's 5 hours a month.
so maybe, you know,
I
if
think
we,
it's a couple hours a month once you get it all
once you
set
get the
up.
hang of it.
Yeah.
And Marilyn has also said that she's willing to do a session for not just Newfane, but Dummerston, who's contacted her, and really work it through.
What I suggested after one of the other deputies called me and said that the town of Dummerston had a similar question and similar concerns about what they were paying and what they were getting, was that I would be willing, if the sheriff's department wanted to set something up with any interested towns, to kind of go through a much more detailed presentation like this with the people who would actually be doing it, so that instead of sitting with Maureen for a couple hours and sitting with someone else for a couple hours, you know.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, the thing I'm thinking about is it's a matter of who's
Right.
within our world
Right.
here is one willing and two able to do it.
Anybody
And it's-
who understands spreadsheets, it's
basically
not that hard to do.
It's got to be either Maureen or Pat, or we hire you. And those are the three, or someone else.
Maureen did send an email, because I talked to Maureen about, you know, the possibility, because Maureen has not been getting, I mean, she's only been getting one report, so she wouldn't have had an idea. So I think she's willing to take that on, and then maybe it would be something that Maureen could work with Pat, and when Pat becomes comfortable with it, or whatever, but somebody, I mean, it really has to, it's one of those absolute things that it has to be tracked.
No, I agree. Yeah, all right, so let's
That's
we don't have to
us,
hold
yeah.
you on that. We have to figure out how we want to deal with it.
Now, subsequent to my preparing that, Gloria stopped by and asked if I could also bring some information about our actual numbers. And I don't have a lot of copies of this. I have mine and 2 extras. So,
Just hand that down to those three and the two, that's all.
this is for Newfane Village.
That was the only
By contract year, you can look at me.
Oh.
So for example, for the contract year of 09-010, which is July 1st to June 30th, we were invoiced $4,020. They wrote a total of $21,000 worth of tickets, and we collected ticket money of $9,136. There are still some tickets during that time frame we haven't gotten paid on yet, but that's what we've collected so far. And the same for 10 and 11. You know, so now in 10, and again, this is not when we got the money. This is for tickets written during that time.
I see.
So we 10 to 11, we were invoiced about $3,600, and we collected $10,000 against the tickets they wrote during that contract year.
Okay.
The next year, we were invoiced close to $4,000, and we collected about $10,000 on tickets written during that contract year. And the current contract year to date, we've been invoiced about $1,700, and so far we've only collected about $1,900 on the tickets written in this contract year.
There's obviously a
just-
delay. But, okay.
There's delay, and also they haven't been writing as many tickets.
Oh, they haven't, in fact.
And we're going to be having a meeting to discuss that.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
So-
Does this all make sense to you, Mark?
It makes perfect sense to me.
Great. It's very clear. I think we just have to figure out.
I have one
think
other
if-
extra
if
copy in case
Maureen-
anyone in the audience wants that.
I think the person I would think of is Maureen, but the second person I think of is Pat, and really, between the two of them, it should happen. So I think, for starters, I just suggest that, Pat, that you have a conversation with Maureen and see if she says she's willing to take it on and create this kind of report for us, a kind of spreadsheet. Create
Didn't
a
Maureen
spreadsheet.
sent an email to us, right?
Well, she sent a spreadsheet saying she was interested in what Marilyn was saying. That doesn't necessarily mean she would go and give us a report on a regular basis.
I'd just like to point out that she is the only person running for the delinquent tax collector this year. So she's going to be taking on another job.
Oh, really?
So maybe it needs to be Pat, but
All right, well,
Yeah, it
let's
sounds like-
let's keep it as, what I think we need to do is put it on our...
Thank you.
I don't want
Thanks
to
a lot.
hold you guys, and we do have other things tonight. And so what I would like to do, Pat, is if you put it on the agenda
Yeah.
for next meeting, to try to, by then we could know whether Maureen feels she can take this on, in which case, fine. or
I will.
Pat? Okay, great, thank you. Okay, the next item of business is, we're now on to, are there any unscheduled members? Oh, you know what, Pat, when you do the agenda, after scheduled members of the public should be unscheduled members
Okay.
of the public. Are there any unscheduled members of the public who wish to speak?
I got some questions now, or I'll do it under unfinished business.
What is the topic going to be?
The topic is the building.
I don't see why you couldn't do it now. It's not on our regular agenda.
Okay.
So therefore, go ahead.
What has been done about the mold problem? What has been done about the water problem? What has been done about the rotted sills? What has been done about the windows?
Nothing. Okay.
Yes.
Next item.
No, this is not.
No, I'm just.
If nothing has been done at the annual meeting, I'm going to propose $100,000 for repair of this building.
Okay. Good.
And he has a right to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. All I'm saying, though, is be kind. You know, we've just gone through budget season, and we've just been building a budget. We did put in to the budget $25,000 for this building, in additional $25,000 for the building, and we have approximately $15,000 left from prior money that's gone into capital funding. I think it's absolutely a valid issue to bring to our attention, and what I would like to do is to put it on, do the same thing I did with the previous, which is to put it on the agenda as a regular agenda item for next meeting, so that we can then address it and consider, because we should be moving forward with it, and I at least have been occupied with other things.
Well, I talked to Todd. Todd had mentioned somebody who might be able to do the sills. Because
Okay,
truly
great.
the very first thing that has to be done is the sills / the water out of the basement. We have a plan. We know how it could be done that way. So I got the name from Todd, but I didn't call. But I will call next week, because that's obviously been on my mind. And so if we can find out if this person, Chris Park, I was going the other way around, Chris, can do it, and can do it for reasonable, then I think as soon as we can,
We may have to bid it, though. It's probably going to be over $2,000.
but we've got to get an estimate.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
We did have the one from.
Can I just make a suggestion? Maybe we talk about this as a discussion
Next,
topic, not just start calling people, just to sort of put it together. I mean, I have some figures, we have some information already.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so can we
So
do
let's
that
do
for
that the next
time,
meeting,
and
yeah.
whatever information
Yeah, I'll
people
bring what I
have
have.
would be very
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Great. Okay, thank you for being. I was being a little glib. I apologize.
Anything else?
Other unscheduled members of the public.
Good evening. I came tonight to
This is
just hear.
Tristan. Yeah, I'm sure you know, but
Nice. I just came to hear what was being discussed about cell tower.
it's on the agenda.
I see that it's on the agenda. I'm afraid I won't be able to stay that.
Well, I hope we'll get to it
What
before you.
What would you like from the public that lets you know how we feel about it? A letter? An email?
I have to be honest with you, Tristan, and say we are going to discuss it tonight, and whatever we are going to do that would be relevant to the AT&T tower must be done tonight.
So you're making a decision tonight?
Well, I don't know. We're making a decision or a non-decision, but whatever we're going to do is going to have to happen tonight, because the deadline for us getting anything to the PSB in response to what they've said to us is the 11th. So whatever we're going to do has to be at this meeting. So I would ask you to stay if you possibly can.
All right. I'll stay as long as I can.
Okay. And moving on, then, any other unscheduled members of the public? Okay, let's move on to new business. We have cemetery issues. Gloria?
Yeah, this will be really brief, and maybe we'll bring it up at another meeting. A couple came in and said that they have 2 cemetery plots in Woodlawn Cemetery that nobody in their family is ever going to be buried in, and they want to be able to give those plots to indigenous people.
Indigent?
No, not...
you
know, the ones who...
people without...
Indigent.
Is it? Is that it?
Yeah, indigenous is
Yeah,
natives.
indigenous is the natives.
So I just want to get a feel from the select board.
They're just 2 they're in a private cemetery?
Yeah.
Well, Woodlawn Cemetery's got their own commission, so that should go before their commission, not the town.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
I know Greg Rector, Bobby Litchfield, and Winter
Okay.
Park are on the commission.
then I will contact them, so I didn't want to lose this. And then, in fact, the town is supposed to receive $5 for every burial permit that comes in, and there's only one, at this point, one funeral home that's been issuing the $5. So when I get a permit from Lou Clark, or I get one from Dave Barry, I need to be collecting that $5. It's on our municipal list of monies that we are to collect. So I just want to make people aware of that, and I'll contact each one of them to say that this is something that should be done.
Okay.
And just so that nobody thinks I'm just stepping out totally.
But I mean, you could do that as town clerk without our saying so.
But I just think the awareness that
No,
we
I
have
agree with
yeah,
that.
okay.
And I'll give you my $5 now. Okay.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you. The SVE bridge design, where do we stand with that? I know I asked Pat and Chris to look into where we stand. Where do we stand? Are we going to get a design?
Tomorrow is the due date that was promised to us to have that for bids.
Okay.
Peter Bowman.
Okay. I wish we'd asked for it the day before.
We did.
We did. So unfortunately, that will have to wait to get the to act. Well, actually, I guess it has to go. What do they? I'm sorry to be so ignorant, but what do they give us? They give us a design. Do we then have to draft an RFP around that design?
I think they're prepared to push it all the way out to the bid process.
They produce an RFP,
Yeah.
and okay, so then, because next time we need to get this going. So that's also an agenda item for next time. Presumably, we will have the unless the board feels we can authorize an individual, a member of the board, to say if everything appears to be in order in terms of what SVE produces, to go ahead and move forward with I guess we still have to create an RFP and set the timing of it.
And is it...
When we get it, we should send a copy to
Yeah.
Xander. Have him send
That's
it to design people.
okay. Let's start with that.
Yeah.
Okay. That seems like
We'll get it right before the next meeting.
Okay,
so we
that would be great. Okay. So, Chris, are you kind of on that?
Okay, I'll be on it.
I mean,
Yes,
I know you're
She's on it.
doing a lot.
She's
so,
on the Yo Woman's.
Okay. Thank you. So that's good. Let's hope that comes in tomorrow, since they have promised it. The next is the Lynch Bridge RFP, and we do have from John Alexander and other people at the state level who have produced an RFP for us that I know I've read and Chris has reviewed, and it certainly looks like a very thorough document, and certainly appears to me, and that's been distributed, I believe, to everyone on the board, that this is what we need to act on. I think we need to set times, and we need to advertise for this, right? We have to do the necessary work to get this in motion. So I know, Chris, you were looking at what was needed in terms of project information. Do we seem to have what we need to kind of complete any kind of blanks?
Yes.
Yeah. So we need to put that all together. So as I understand, we need to complete the RFP just by filling in the blanks, so to speak. We need to advertise.
Yep.
We have to come up with an advertisement, though I think we could probably use the format we've used previously. Pat, I believe you have format for the ads? I mean, in other words, you replace RFPs.
Yes, have copies.
Okay, so we need to place an ad, and we need to set, which I'm really, when I say we, in this case, I mean Pat, and we need to specify a date at which we need these proposals to be received. Do we need to give them more than the time between this meeting and our next meeting? Or I don't know, if there's a normal period of time that's allowed?
Isn't it longer than just 2 weeks?
2 weeks is a little short.
A little short, so should we say not this meeting, but the following meeting, set at 5 p.m. on the...
That's like town meeting time, right?
Oh, yeah.
Is it
That's
already
the
up there?
reorganization.
That's the full reorganizational
Unless we
meeting.
get it back and hold a special meeting,
Special meeting.
just to deal with it, get it done.
I really want to move it ahead.
I think we should do it before the board, if the board's gonna change it, before the board changes, we're gonna start all over again.
Could we have a special meeting?
We could plan that now. Tristan?
I've been involved with RFPs a lot, and it's really helpful if you schedule a question and answer period very close to the date that you mail it out, and that way you do as best you can to get everybody exactly on the same page, same playing field. Otherwise you could get different kinds of responses, each one thinking, well, we followed your regulations, we followed your format,
Right.
when in fact they don't. So for you to get apples to apples, you really help yourselves by establishing a Q&A date specific within a couple of days of the day you mail it out.
The question is, who, in my mind, I like that idea, but I don't personally have the knowledge that I would be able to answer beyond what's in this document. Todd, do you feel you have some?
No, I wonder if we could get Mark Pickering to do it.
That's what I was
Oh,
wondering.
okay. So maybe what we need to do is,
I don't know that Dan could do it, but I don't know.
Is he going to be part of the bid?
That's the problem, I don't know.
he might. So I think he kind of was ducking when I asked him about it, and so I think it's probably Mark that we would go to. So we would want to ask Mark if he could be present for questions. So in part, again, I'm looking to you, Pat, to kind of make this happen. So it would be finding out from Mark Pickering of the state of AOT when he might be available, and we would then set that that we would send it out at that point, and then the date that, let's try to back into it a little bit. If the I'm just going to look at the calendar. If we're
When could we meet?
Our next meeting is our official next meeting is the 21st. If we met on the 28th, that's a Thursday. Let me make sure that's okay for me. It is. Would the 28th be a reasonable time to have a meeting specifically to open the bids and choose? All right. So we're shooting for February 28th. We're planning now to have a special meeting is 6 the best time for people? 5:30? What's best for people? I'm fine with whatever time you guys find best.
6 is fine with me. I work until 6.
6, okay. All right, 6 o'clock on the 28th, a special meeting, short, presumably short, but special meeting to open the bids. So that's the date we're heading for the Lynch Bridge design, right? This is just design, by the way. This is not to build the bridge that we've separated now. This is just the design of the bridge. So it's a little bit
SVE
simpler.
Bridge.
Okay, we're going to ask Mark if there's a date. As soon as we'd like to time sending this out with that. Now, The next question I would have is, apart from advertising it, don't we often solicit?
Yeah.
And I know that Christina had a whole list that do we have a list?
Mark would have that too.
Mark would have that. Okay, so the other thing to get from Mark is a list of essentially design firms.
I did get a list
Or
of
maybe you
it
have.
from Dan Hall.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, so if you have but I would just double check with Mark. Again, we want to keep it very clean and neat, especially if Dan's firm happens to want to bid. We want to be sure that we're not, and they do want to bid. So then definitely you need Mark so that we're not getting the list. There's no possibility of any, funny business. Not that I would ever think Dan would do.
So that list is going to need to be very quickly
Right,
put
that would be
together.
as in tomorrow.
We pretty well.
As soon as possible. Both those, getting to
Monday, yeah.
becomes the Mark is the source of it. So if ideally, we definitely want to get the advertisement in as soon as possible and get the date that Mark could meet with people and then email out now, the proposal, the RFP as it stands, and I know this isn't fair, but Chris, I know you've looked at it. Could you finalize it? Do the little bits you found that needed the
You
note.
want the tweaking? Yeah.
The tweaking so
We're
that
pretty good
it could be
on
good. Okay. So I'm asking Chris to do that.
Did you get a chance to review it, Todd? Okay.
So you have it. If you would feed anything to Chris, if there's something that you see, well, that's whatever.
It's pretty clean. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, it looks to me like they did a really fine job and are really helping us out.
And that's
Please, I'm sorry, but please convey to Mark that we really appreciate the help for doing this. Yes, Gloria, what did you say?
and that's already gone to John Alexander.
This from John,
Okay.
or their organization.
There.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Very pleased with that. The next item on the agenda is V-Trans grants, and kind of the most obvious thing that came out of that is, and I'm just bringing up my own notes on this now. Okay, is that we do have to vote on new standards. The 2013 standards are different from the 2011 standards that we had been using. Todd, I think you've reviewed them a little bit. What can you give us a read on these standards?
Pretty straightforward, pretty much. The only thing that John and Alexander said to us before was change the 3 inches of crushed gravel to 6 inches on road.
Oh, to actually change that to
He said that way, if we have it down in writing, when Steve comes in, we get paid for 6 inches of gravel, not the 3 inches of gravel.
Where do you know where it is in here? Let's see if you can find it.
So it's not roadway thing. Yeah, it's right here. Change it to 6.
So we're going to change this to 6.
Otherwise, it's pretty straightforward, I think.
Okay. Down in Newfane. And I think that's the most critical thing for us to do. The other thing that, though, as I was mentioning, and I sent an email to Todd on this, that we do need to update our BOPSIT standards. We have to do that survey this spring, or the culverts, or we're going to get,
Hold it, Jeff.
Okay. So we have to, so Todd, if you
You set that up last fall, as soon as the snow was done.
I know, but it didn't happen, so. So what I need is a vote to approve the new...
A motion.
I'm sorry, a motion to approve the new standards as amended to add an additional 6 inches rather than the 3 inches in the original document, to approve those as our current standards for our bridge and road and bridge standards. Do I have a motion to that effect?
Second.
And today's date is Thursday. I guess you don't put Thursday.
February.
Just February
7th.
7th, 2013. There has been a motion. Is there a second? Did you second?
No, Priscilla did.
Priscilla seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. I'll put it here with a pile of things that needs to be signed, because it needs to be signed by us.
And then in the end, I'll need a copy of that for the town record.
Okay, so Pat, would you be sure to get a copy to Gloria for the town records? Okay. Next item of business is cell tower. So you made it. To just summarize where we're at with the AT&T cell tower, we're not really tonight. There's nothing new. I had no new update on the VTEL tower that I have. We can discuss anything. We did have a meeting. The hearing officer did, and I think this was reported in the prior select board meeting, but just to reiterate, that we did meet with the hearing. I was on the phone with the hearing officer of the PSB.
As was I. As was I, then.
Oh, and Gloria as well. So, and I think we reported on this. Basically, what appeared to be the case was that the concerns that we had, the requests that we had, were basically denied. That was that for Art to be able to hire an independent consultant at AT&T's expense was denied, and that it was that the second part of that request, which was if we couldn't, would the state direct their independent consultant to review alternate sites, was also rejected as simply not part of the 248A, Act 248A process. We then subsequently have received on January 20, or the date, it's dated January 25th, I don't know when exactly we received it, the assessment by the Gene Vissering Landscape Architecture, and that document, which was posted on our website, it basically, he stated, it's sort of an odd letter if you read it, there's some point where he says that it will cause adverse effects, but then summarizes by saying, so he says, yet summary the proposed site will result in adverse aesthetic impacts, but then go on to say that it doesn't do anything really dramatically destructive, and therefore reaches the standard that they're using is the tower would not appear offensive to the average person, and concludes that it is acceptable, and especially the bottle brush or the natural pine thing. So I just open it up for any comment. We have had, let me just say we've had a couple comments. One is by an abutting landowner that in fact he had never received the packet from AT&T, which is a requirement, so he's asking for additional time from the PSB. We have the right to respond to the PSB's letters were we to so choose. But that's really where it stands at this moment. So I open it up for discussion. Yes, I open it up for discussion. And Tristan, I'm sort of looking at you because you said earlier in the meeting that you had something to say.
Well, there wasn't so much that I had something to say as much as, I mean, I'm in favor of it. I see really no reason not to approve it and support it. I was also interested in who might be attending and what kind of opinion we voiced. So I was trying also to get an idea of, what's the mood in the community about an issue like that. My own feeling is that it should be supported.
All right. We did have 2 or 3 rather heated, not heated, but rather extent. This room was actually, the room was heated by body power. We had rather full, best attendance we've had in years. But with people expressing their feelings. I also do have a letter from Jay Urato being very upset about the conclusion and protesting it. So there's those in that Oak Hill development area that are very upset about it, and then they have expressed themselves, and we did write a letter expressing our opinion. I do actually want to read my own opinion, which I will give to the press. I thought Mike would be here tonight, but I will send it. But I just want to put it on, go on record for myself, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't screw it up. This is basically what I'm speaking for myself here, not for the other members, but I have the right to speak of myself. And what I would say is this, that whatever the intent of the state of Vermont's telecommunications statute, 248A, its practical effect is to dramatically overload the equation in favor of the telecommunications industry to the extent that any local democratic processes are largely ceremonial. In providing telecommunications corporation the option to seek approval either through the municipality or the state authority, the BSB, duly enacted municipal ordinances are, for all intents and purposes, nullified. The threat expressed at our select board meeting by both public officials and corporate spokespersons is that the telecommunications companies will simply walk away, leaving localities with gaps in cell coverage that are harmful to business, inconvenient to most people, and sometimes seriously dangerous in case of emergency. Perhaps out of this fear, along with the difficulty getting telecommunications companies to come to the table, current legislation all but completely deprives localities of meaningful input into these decisions. This has put the Newfane Selectboard in an impossible position. Our town needs cell phone coverage, but our duly enacted ordinance sets requirements for height, setback of towers, and adverse aesthetic effects. AT&T presents a specific site already negotiated with and signed by the property owner. We are given a recommendation, we are asked to give a recommendation to the PSB as part of the process, with our own ordinance cited where it agrees with the telecommunications firm and dismissed as irrelevant where it does not. Because the PSB must then decide up or down to take the telecommunications firm's offer or leave it, there is no room to insist that the firm respond seriously to local concerns to ensure that the best site for all concerns is chosen. Why then didn't the legislature directly remove municipalities' right to control their own environment where wireless telecommunications is concerned? There's a simple, if not comforting, answer. They left the appearance of democratic input while undercutting the reality. All the cards are in the telecommunication company's hands, despite the fact that they are the beneficiaries of license that are a public asset. They can essentially dictate the terms of proposed coverage. In this case, the ability of AT&T to insist that the only sites to consider were those within 0.5 miles of the site they've chosen essentially closed off consideration of sites that might provide similar coverage without adversely affecting townsfolk. In this way, the state of Vermont has essentially followed the pattern of the federal government, allowing corporate interests to dominate the conversation while giving lip service to the concerns of those most directly affected. This is neither a partisan nor an anti-telecommunications position, the one I'm taking, that is to say. We need cell coverage. AT&T will provide it, but if and only they do it in their own way. The state of Vermont makes it easy for them to do so, rather than finding ways of ensuring that those most affected by the construction of facilities have a real say in their placement. Under these conditions, the hours and hours of careful listening by the Select Board of townspeople's concern are a charade, not a legitimate exercise in democracy. That's simply my opinion. I don't know if there's any further discussion. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Ted Colligan. I live on Pound Road. I am part of the viewpoint of the proposed tower. And John, that's a beautiful letter. I have three-part questions. Sorry up front, but I'm curious, as for the board, does the board also share John's feelings, that angle on this discussion? Specifically, do you guys support the recommendations of the Wyndham Regional Commission, where the pole will be a pine tree camouflage? Do you support that fully, the board, not just John, the board, and not have a monopole? So just to be clear, to be a pine tree camouflage, a PTC? That's part one.
Do you want to take them one at a time? Maybe best to take it
Sure.
one
Well,
at a time.
this might be a summary, and I'm sorry if I'm late to the party
No,
on
it's
this
okay.
one, but I just wanted, if the board is unanimous with John's points,
Well, it doesn't have to be.
I'm curious. Well, I'm asking the board. I appreciate the opportunity to address you, and I like that you got an extension for us so that we can make a better decision with it. But I would like to hear whether the board supports, I guess, the first part, the PTC, the pine tree camouflage versus the monopole.
To be honest, first of all, we never really discussed it in any detail as a board.
But I think it was one thing that they conceded of the Wyndham Regional
Absolutely.
Commission that,
Absolutely correct.
I think originally when it was asked, they said that they would not, when we asked about it.
right, and then they
And
did.
then when Wyndham Regional recommended it, they did say they would do it.
Is that what happened? I don't remember.
So I think overall,
But has AT&T, is the blood dry on the paper? It's going to be a PTC?
yes.
It is? Okay, thank
That's
you.
what I understand.
I thought the blood is, that's quite an interesting way to
Sorry.
say it. We don't know the answer to, the truth is we don't know what
I
the
think that
PSB is
accepted-
not moving.
They accepted
They
that.
accepted the recommendation on
Yes.
that.
Of that one.
AT&T accepted it.
Right.
And the PSB, because Wyndham Regional asked it and AT&T accepted it, it's a very likely turn of events.
Okay, thank you. Second part, is it limited to one unlit tower? Did they come back and say we need a second one?
No,
third one?
it is one tower.
One unlit tower?
One tower.
One unlit tower?
Unlit, yes, they did say it was unlit.
All right, thank you. And finally, I'm just worried, because I'm in the viewpoint, I don't want to look at a rusty dinosaur 50 years, 100 years down the road, let's say. Do you know what plans they have for the length of the lease, and when does it come down?
I think it's a 25-year lease,
That sounds right.
and I think they have to deconstruct it.
When it's no longer in operation? Or what's the language? Tell me, do we know, can we make our letter, because we have until the 11th to make a letter to the PSB, can we put some language in there that if it's no longer currently used, they need to take it down?
Again, it's a little tricky, the thing till the 11th, to be frank. Strictly speaking, the comment period ended a long time ago.
Okay.
When I asked in the telephone conversation whether once the time was extended, but specifically to reply in reference to the letter that we published on our website of the
Aesthetic.
I would say, though, that the PSP is likely to accept a letter that refers to that as you... What was it? Tell me again what you were just...
I would like to have some language in there when it's no longer in use.
It probably is. It's really up to the PSP, though, because they are granting the license.
I'm asking tonight that the board put that language in your letter.
Okay.
We haven't.
I'm only going to say thank you for your input. I don't know what the board wishes to do.
Thank you.
Because this letter that John read is
That's just me.
going from
That's
John, not...
I'm not proposing that the board send my letter. I'm stating it, but I'm not proposing it as a letter from the select board.
John, that was a beautiful letter, but is someone sending a letter before the 11th?
Well, I think that that's what we're talking about right now.
Yes, agreed.
And if so, or if we are, I mean, it could just be, what I'm wondering is, we had a copy, I didn't print it out, that I read, which was what AT&T, after AT&T agreed, with all of what they agreed to after the Wyndham Regional letter that was written, what they agreed to do.
Mm-hmm.
They amended some of their
That's
application.
The monopole.
Yeah.
yeah.
But so there is a piece of work or document that has all of what they intend to do. And I just don't know if on that it says something about decommissioning it when it becomes
Pat, do you
obsolete or...
have the binder?
I have the binder, it's on there. And that's, you're welcome to look through that, to read it, to make copies, whatever you want. It's a 3-ring binder, it's quite large.
About yay thick.
So you're welcome to come in here during the week if you want to, and...
Is tonight, right now, too soon?
No, I'm
No.
doing that.
I mean, because part of it is it may be in there. That's
Exactly.
Yeah, it may well be.
And I don't want to take up your time.
Sure,
Just
yeah,
one question,
okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
What I actually am going to say now may not make everybody happy, but my personal feeling is we have made our position clear. We stated it in the letter that we sent to them. They made it, we knew at the point where they said we're not going to consider alternate sites that they're basically closing off. I think we've said everything we have to say. I don't personally propose to the board another. It's a difficult thing to hash out. There are just as there are people who want it one way, there are people who really, more than anything, don't want to do it.
Did you know that we sent a letter?
I was unaware. When was that sent?
Yeah, a month ago. We sent a letter, I felt a very strong letter.
Get a copy to
But
you.
any talk about decommissioning it?
We did not no. So take a look. I think they do agree that they'll decommission
I
it,
think
but I
there is
don't know
some-
that for certain.
All right, so it's in here already.
I don't know, but whatever they have proposed is there. And then there's also the law, 248A, which probably does have such a clause. You could check it out. But I don't know, in all honesty.
Sure.
The other thing that...
You are free to write anything, of course, that you may wish to the PSB, and they may well consider it. I don't know if they're...
I was just going to say that, Ted, I believe that the extension period was only to address the aesthetic
Absolutely, that is correct.
avenue
That was what I was
that
told.
we talked about in our letter. And so I don't know if we can actually even write something that will address some...
I don't think we could. I would not think
I mean,
we could.
on the other hand, we can probably write whatever we want.
Right, we can write whether does the tree fall in the forest if nobody's listening, and I do believe this is a case where they've heard what they want to say, they've made the decision, and I've been Don Quixote enough in my life not to want to joust at further windmills.
The thing that John and I really recognized from this phone conference that we had, where Will Dodge was on there and with several different people, is that when AT&T gave the proposal to PSB, PSB has their own little box, and essentially the concerns that we had as townspeople are not addressed in the PSB little box. And they can't, the hearing officer said he can't decide on anything that's outside of their specs.
Right. In other words, I mean, it's it's a law. Our legislature passed the law. The law says that it must be undue adverse aesthetic damage, and they have a standard. They call it the Kichi standard. It's based on some prior law, and so that's the basis that they're doing it. That's the way it works. I mean, at a certain point, you say, this is what's happening now. Doesn't mean you can't continue to talk about it. It hasn't happened yet. There's a process. Doesn't mean the legislature can't decide that, hey, we're giving too much leeway here. But as far as the select board feeling like its time is well spent to craft more ingenious letters, that feels like that time. We've done what we can to speak we've definitely spoken our piece. They told me to shut up any number.
John?
Yes.
I think you raised the larger question, which is not simply whether cell communications is available, but rather whether the local democratic process can be honored. And I think that every municipality in the state is suffering the same thing. We've seen time and again comments about whether local jurisdiction has any right to, at the table, to talk about wind towers.
Right.
And so I just wonder whether you and other municipalities are looking at, is there a moment when together you can craft what would be a rational negotiating forum, honestly and accurately representing those at the table to come up with a solution that works. I mean, otherwise we end up with adversarial and very, very bitter reactions, and that's not necessary.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Well, personally, I think some adversarial and blah, blah, blah are necessary. But that may be my personality. But the VLCT, the Vermont League of Cities and Towns, is very concerned about this very particular issue, the broader issue of to what extent do our municipalities control our own destinies. And there are certain things where you can say, okay, you should, you know, it has to override. It's a national concern or a state defense. We're not going to, you know, have our own defense plan. But there are others where you'd say, well, really, we're not saying whether or not there should be cell coverage. We want cell coverage, but we should have some negotiating power about where it is, about under what conditions, about how tall. Those are things that so the VLCT is very much thinking about those, and I personally, at least, will certainly participate in some way in that.
I expect you would. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I learned what I wanted. Thanks.
Okay. Yes.
Hi. I came in at the end of this letter, and I thought the tone of it I appreciate as well. And your previous letter of a few weeks ago, I was there to hear the whole thing. So did the PSB board ever respond to you?
Yes, they did.
To that letter?
They did to the extent that they met, they had what they called a status update. They didn't call it a hearing. They said it was a status update with the hearing officer. And Gloria and I both were on that call. And the hearing officer made totally clear that the rules of the 248A do not permit considering alternatives. It's strictly, the document is before them. It's either, they either permit it or they don't permit it. And
Yes, that was that box.
That's what Gloria's talking about. Yeah, that's okay. All right, I would like to, I understand that people, you know, but I would like to read, and we have roads that are approachable and we'd like to get through these.
Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering if Ted's looking through this to see if there's anything about the decommissioning. Meanwhile, if he finds that there isn't anything,
well, it's also whether there's in 248A is a second line of, you know, whatever.
I mean, I just think that it would have more weight if something came from the select board.
I'm certainly willing. I'm a little bit. Time is a problem. They haven't, and as you pointed out yourself, that's not what they've allowed us to comment on. We did not comment on it in the first period.
But I think that what he's talking about is an aesthetic piece. So at least we could, yeah.
All right. I mean, we could. I mean, the bottom line is we can say anything we want.
Right.
But I think we could emphasize.
We could. You know, if the board would wish it, we could, I would draft a short note that said we're not going to respond in detail to the thing, but our concern was raised about whether the decommissioning is part of the law. I think we should at least know the law before we do that, though.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't want to be just blowing in the wind or, you know, just for no purpose.
Well, I'm wondering, I don't know how many of you read Richard Marik's letter to the editor today. And so he said, as a legislator, he didn't respond at all to the AT&T one because it had already gone to the Public Service Bureau. So he has been responding to the VTEL. But I'm wondering if Richard, I mean, the way he was talking about the law.
You know, I think that's a very good idea. That though I don't know if he has to not speak on the one issue, how could he speak on the other? I was going to.
But he should know the law.
Oh, he would know the answer, but we're kind of in a time crunch here because by the 11th, I guess I'm not connected. I was going to try to see if I could find out while we're sitting here.
Maybe we could go ahead and go on and then just come back.
All right,
if he
so let's
does
just
or
come
doesn't.
back. If we can see whether there's anything there about how they're going to decommission it. And
So do you hear what we're saying, Ted?
Not so far, it's not in there.
Okay.
The next, we'll come back to it at the end. I do have access now. I'm going to just try to see if I can bring it up. 248A. See if I can find it. Okay, Vermont Statutes Online, 248A. Okay, let me go ahead. The next item of business is the Golden Woods property.
Adams Hill Road, FEMA
No, I'm
status.
sorry, I just put a check mark against it without having actually discussed it. Sorry. The Adams Hill Road FEMA status update. I think, Chris, you're the one to update us on this.
So where we're at on that is we sent a letter to Ben Rose letting him know that FEMA downgraded the anticipated amount on that, and we feel it's in an error, but it's a pretty huge error. It's about $86,000 to $90,000. So we're waiting for a response.
Okay.
That's as much of an update as I can give you on that. All I can tell you that the binders for Adams Hill, I'm going to hopefully finish those off throughout the weekend on copied paper. I'm not allowed to take the original file. But I think I will have that assembled for a little better feel, even to close out.
Okay.
That's tremendous.
Well, I think you're doing a fabulous job, Chris.
So-
I really appreciate it tremendously.
Have a piece of chocolate.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gloria.
All right. So is that...
I'll keep you posted.
Okay, thank you. Now comes the Golden Woods property, and I think everyone hopefully had a chance to read the letter produced. I don't believe there's any action required here. I don't know if there's any further discussion.
Not on our part, right?
Not on our part.
Tim.
I'm just, yeah, on our,
Yeah.
I got our part.
Fire department involvement.
Yeah, he asked fire department and so on. It does seem to be a lot going on that property that isn't right. As well as our zoning administrators involvement, because they have more people
Where is
that
that
are
road?
supposed to.
Flea market.
Go flea market, and it's just that little thing that you don't really see.
On Route
It's like just after the flea market, it's the first.
Okay. All right, so is there any, okay, then we move it forward. The next one is the E911. Todd, I think this was really, I was supposed to give you a call during the week, and I failed to just
I did talk to Merle.
to just know where we stand with this.
Merle's been working on that. He was going to get a hold, I think he did get a hold of the 911 board to make sure the numbers are right. And I think that's moving along from what he said, so.
All right, so that's really what we're most concerned about, is that we don't have somebody get stuck, going to go the wrong way, and take longer to get to.
He thought that they were okay, but he was working with the 911 board on it to make sure. So that is moving forward, I think.
Is that Miller Road?
Yeah,
Okay.
or Myler. Myler.
Okay.
It doesn't have two L's?
The next, is there an update on 279 Dover? It says Chris here. Do you?
Yeah.
I know a lot of these.
She's been in here.
I think Chris is living in the...
Yeah, I'm living in FEMA world.
I'm gonna offer to do your laundry.
So,
I'm right.
It's going to be in the minutes.
But not ironing, because she likes to iron.
so we are in the process of, Dan actually is the one that sent all the amendments on 279 Dover Road. Right now, we're kind of working with different various people in the state to see if we can get the money.
So you're
It's
working.
moving. It is now moving, and we actually had some assistance from from a new person with this. It's the what is that? The Three River
Ottaquiche.
Yeah, the Ottaquiche, who's kind of handling all these, and I'd say they're being helpful. Where it really will end up, I don't know, but they are helping us.
Was that Dan Potter from?
Dan Potter.
From it's actually the Windsor Regional.
Exactly.
Windsor Regional Planning Commission. Somehow he's involved.
Mm-hmm. So I'm expecting two things down this next week. Paperwork that's passing now back and forth to the state for these grants and making sure that we have all our proper forms in order. I really can't give you much more of an update. Maybe in another week or two I will. We're just still juggling balls in the air.
But we're still, in terms of the other 3 that are to be bought out, we're still waiting for somebody to trigger finally.
Well, I kind of encompass those other 3 in this whole broad discussion, not just 279. Yeah.
Okay. The last item on our regular agenda is the Vermont Youth Conservation Corps. I know, Gloria, you had reviewed that document, and could you give us just a picture of what they could conceivably do, or what the possibilities are on that?
My understanding, about a year ago, I think, John, not quite, but asked me to look into this. Some paperwork came in, and I just got that handed. So Marik Caduto, who is the watershed coordinator for our Basin 11, and I and Keegan from the head guy for the Vermont Youth Corps, we traveled down Dover Road, and basically the Vermont Youth Corps they've gotten the funding so that they'll be free to the town, and they'll come in complete week, 2 weeks, whatever we want, and they often do plantings of certain things. So my hope is that once we can get going, we can apply for the federal highway for the grubbings.
Yeah.
And they'll be able to help spread and do that. And Marie and Keegan and I will start an email brainstorming, but that's why I wanted to bring it to the board. Things, Todd, that you might think of, if there's some, I think they did a lot of work on the trail for the Indian Love Call one summer.
They're the ones that work on town trails.
So if we can line it up, we can have several weeks, but we've got to know that we've got a team of 10, 15 people with their supervisors.
Would you want to talk to the conservation committee or commission, whatever it is?
Can do that, but and I'd like to see some concrete things, like right along Dover Road too, to get.
The problem with most of on Dover Road is the town we haven't got the buyouts done yet, so we can't go on those properties. That's what I've been told. Dan said it's very clear.
No, we can't. Yeah, we can't do that.
We can't do that so we can't really do anything. So I've got some material that I could use up on Route 279 along the riverbank, but Dan said don't do it yet. You're gonna get yourself in trouble.
Right.
So we got to be really careful about where we go and how we do it.
Yeah. So maybe town forest.
Gives them a heads up on it anyway.
Yeah.
We can't go to like 279 Dover Road and start putting long.
I see.
Until the buyout happens.
Right.
And everything's been demolished and.
Right.
I see. But what about along the roadside, or do we have some?
Wherever it's like that 279 in front of that, I'm sure
It's still their property.
I see.
What about all of that? Once we get past John's house and go down, that whole section heading closer to Pete Van Loon's, where it was all wiped out and you're heading into, that's just raw bank.
What is the story with that property?
At that point, I guess you have to get landowner's permission up to do anything. The town can't just go start doing stuff out of town right away without getting hold of landowners to to get permission on the property.
So that would be part of it.
Yeah, because you don't even have an emergency, it's not like, we've got trees bungled up there that keep
The old
washing
South
the road
Newfane
out.
area, we could clean that up this spring,
Okay.
where they had the trailers.
Yeah.
Get rid of the the piles that are there.
That isn't part of the project, that they
No.
clean that up?
No, 'cause that was, we put all that back.
Because they,
That could get loaned and seeded,
okay.
because the town does own that.
We do need to provide the materials, so we could probably do
Or
that.
ditching or something like that, a lot of times ditching really works good for that stuff. Leaves and dirt, stuff mixed together, and it rots down.
Okay, so I've got two suggestions. We can, homeowners.
I know the conservation committee gets them just about every year to go up there and do some work on the trails, build them little bridges, and I think they're the ones who cleaned out the view for everybody that he was talking about. So you might just want to talk with them, see if they have any projects for them to do, or if they've already scheduled them.
Yeah, because again, when we did this, we were just looking at the kind of the horror stories of the flood. So collectively, you're okay for me to just start pursuing this and let that thing of
I would
landowners?
really like to see what we can do and kind of keep in the loop so that once we do own those properties,
I would just say, whatever you're going to do, just bring back the board so we know what's going on.
yeah, agreed.
Okay.
Put out feelers.
Okay, just now I'm sorry to sort of been trying to track two things at once, but I guess that's sort of the way my mind is anyway. Just coming back to the cell tower thing, I did look up 248A, and there is nothing in it about them taking down towers they built.
You know what, I'm thinking,
If it pleases the board, I'll write a letter. You
Yeah.
spoke to it that you feel like you've done enough?
Yeah, I think, it's not so much done enough as
done all that we,
what we can. And,
Sure.
And, okay, I appreciate that.
Okay,
actually.
thank you.
yeah, that's in our ordinance, that's why,
Yes,
that's
and
what I
it's in the
remember.
ordinance, and they are supposed to, despite
Right.
the way we've been, to be blunt, treated in this situation, our ordinance is supposed to be respected. I was just reading the law. So take a look at 248A.
Will do.
Draft yourself a letter,
And send it.
and maybe I'll sign it with you as an individual.
I just would like to throw it out there, I mean, would it have more weight if it came from the select board?
Well, it's not an easy. I don't think it. To be honest, I don't think it's going to have any weight at all.
But I think that, if we do it, then we're responding to the desires of people in the community of a point that just hadn't been brought up before. I don't have any problem with having us just do a really quick letter. Oh, by the way, this, and put
Pointing
it,
out that it's not,
that's an aesthetic.
it has not been addressed, apparently.
What do others think?
I'm fine with it either way. If Ted wants to write the letter, that's fine. I would say if you write the letter, you might want to put it to the letter to the editor, just so the townspeople would see that too. So that maybe some of the other townspeople would respond to that a little bit too.
The thing that I'm concerned about is that hasn't the review period been,
It was extended.
but has it been extended for other people as well, or just for the select board? That's my point.
I don't know. All I know, I'll find the AT&T's.
No, for everybody else. It's so that it was to be,
that
for
should
people
be- should be
to be able to respond to
Though
that
it was
aesthetic.
specific. It was, it's fine. And it's certainly okay. I mean, certainly, it's certainly worth writing. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
And I understand your point, Priscilla. I need to hear a motion of some sort, or I need to move on.
Can he mention the select board in his letter somehow?
Well, I think the simplest would be if he drafts it, I probably would have been, I don't think we can, no. Not because we're not all,
You could say that he brought it to our attention.
yes, certainly. Certainly. And I think he can say that we're concerned about it. Well, our ordinance, and he can quote our ordinance.
What about, okay, so just taking this a step further in your letter that you wrote, John, what about asking Richard Marik to come in here and talk to us about what he does know and doesn't know?
Well, he said he can't talk about the specific case. He could talk about the law if he was involved in writing the law.
Yeah.
That in
We
particular.
could ask Richard if he would come in and talk with us.
And just to sort of, because I have been talking to him about it because of the AT&T, I mean the VTEL tower. And, you know, I mean, I've had many conversations with him about it at this point. And, you know, part of it was, you know, for instance, I said to him, you know, when this was passed, did you ever think about, like, contacting the municipalities and saying to them, that now your ordinances are no longer, you know, we've streamlined the process, and yeah, and he's like, geez, you know, we didn't think of that. You know, so if we talk to him as a select board, does that then...
I'm happy to invite him to come to a meeting.
Be good, I think.
Happy to do so. I will do so. Okay?
Thanks.
All right.
I've got a couple of other
Okay.
little reports. We had a total of 64 people vote for the Leland and Gray Union High School District yesterday, and we had 43 in favor and 21 opposed. And I didn't see anything in the paper about the results from all 5 towns.
So that's just ours.
That's just ours.
It's Thursday, the paper is useless for anything. Thursday, Friday. It's only good Tuesday and Wednesday.
It lights fires pretty good.
And so anyway, that's down from 106 who voted last year to 64 this year out of 1,269 voters in the town of Newfane. And then this is just a funny bit of information, but probably early, second week in January, I think it's when we were finding the title to the truck. I found a file folder in a drawer that was totally unmarked, so nobody knew what it was. And in there was a check for the property transfer tax return form, close to $4,000, and it was written in July of 2007.
Oh my goodness.
So I was able to get...
Where was this vault, vault?
In the vault, in the middle of, you know, like cemeteries from 1994, and, you know, I didn't go through everyone. So anyway, the lawyer on that one was able to rewrite the check. That's all fine. He apparently wasn't too concerned about not having a $4,000 check. But then we had just this little bitty one where, in fact, Carol Mellis gave me a copy of the check and everything, so I sent it up and they said, but you got to look at the back of it. It was paid to the order and deposited in our town account. So we don't have a line item for this. I just asked Maureen, we have to send up the $52.70 because that will then make these people the legal owners of that property. So just to let you know that this is coming out of miscellaneous, unless you can think of any other. But I think now we've taken care of problems from 2007.
Was that your predecessor? Oh, okay.
All right. Thank you. Is that it?
Yeah, I just wanted you...
Thank you. All right. I think we're now to correspondence. I'm not aware of any correspondence other than what we discussed in relation to this.
Yes, we do.
Oh.
We marked it, Fieldstone Lodge.
Oh, right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, Fieldstone Lodge, I don't know if we distributed this to all, but basically it is, we did have the judgment was filed and accepted, and so the change that we agreed It's been
And copies went to both Maureen and Doris so that they could have them for the records
great.
of taxation.
Terrific. Terrific.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Is that all on correspondence?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Okay, that concludes the regular business of the select board. We'll be going into executive session at this point.